All right, and I'll just
Thank you so much. Already on, because that's where everybody else wants to. Alright. That's everything. Turned on everything. Everyone can hear okay?
just slightly ringing.
Slide a bit ringing.
We were yesterday.
You might need to just.
Just get my pen. So everyone, you know how we talked about yesterday about maybe renting a room and having something on Wednesday? Last night, Jesus and I thought we'd really like to just go on a walk up a mountain and maybe have a picnic or something. Be more relaxed, and anyone who wants to join in could do it. And yeah, so we thought maybe we'd do that on Tuesday if people would like to join us. So yeah, we can talk more about it at the end today, how we'll manage that. But yeah.
How we manage it, it's just everybody rock up at a certain time.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Where we'll be.
If
Yeah.
you're not there, you miss out.
Yeah. Yeah. How to logistically arrange that. Yeah. We won't be managing.
It'll be the fullness. Fullness. Is that how you say it? Fullness?
Fullness.
Yeah. We've got the lifts there.
Yeah.
There's a double lift there, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So today we thought we might do some Q&A.
Welcome, everybody.
Oh yeah, hi, welcome. How are you?
Hello, it's fine.
Tired? Not
Tired? Starting to get tired.
Yeah.
Usually by the third day, everybody's starting to get tired and everyone's shutting down feelings and sort of gets a bit tired by the third day. Mary and I didn't get much sleep last night either.
No. Yeah, so we're a bit tired too.
Stormy last night, but also up where we were anyway. I don't know if it was down here. Was it stormy down here too?
It was beautiful in the mountains. Yeah. But we just hopped, weren't we?
We are, yeah. Yeah, we find everywhere we go in summer, it's sort of not equipped for summer, is it? Because it's more equipped for winter. So, you know, at home we'd have a fan or something where we could just cool down a little bit. Yeah.
We have a in the place where we're staying, there's like a little foyer, I guess, where you come in and then the bedroom and the kitchen. But when you get up to go to the toilet in the night, there's a sensor light that comes on in the foyer. So if the other one of us isn't awake, they're awake. Yeah. Yeah. It's not bad though. It's been peaceful. So. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what we thought we'd do today is Q&A, but from your questions that you've submitted. And we'll do some mediumship as well in amongst that. So, yeah.
So Mary's managing our
I am.
Q&A list.
I'm in charge.
Mary's in charge, but also there was times when I'll take it off her because she'll be doing some mediumship and she won't be able to see what she's doing otherwise.
Okay. So first off, do you want to have a hot seat, like someone's when we answer that question?
No.
Pressure's on. But do you want the mic to go to the person, I guess? I'll say their name.
Well, it depends a little on whether the person wants to be involved or not.
Yeah. So Doris is the first question. Would you like to be involved, Doris? Yeah.
Yeah. Still ringing a bit, isn't it? So I might just drop that. So. See how that goes. Okay. Doris.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi.
how are you?
Well, do you want me to read it out?
Doris, can I just compliment you on your question? Of all the questions we heard, I felt yours was the most sincere, to be honest. And the main reason why is because you're considering your sin. And this is something that's very unique amongst people generally. You know, most people are thinking, how can I benefit my own life? And they ask questions about benefiting their own life all the time. But they're not considering that actually a lot of the penalties on the soul that cause your life to not be very well managed on earth are due to your sin. And so a lot of times people think, I want to benefit my life, I want to progress, I want to, basically I want to avoid my pain, my future pain, by making good decisions. But it's all me, like there's no feeling for what they've done in the past towards other people. And yet, from God's perspective, and also from the law's perspective, the law of compensation I'm talking about now, that law is actually causing a degradation to your soul as you engage new sins. And so the more selfish a person becomes, that's actually a sin. And so, it turns out that a lot of times we're so focused on self, improving self, we forget that actually most of the penalties that have occurred on our soul with regard to love are how we're treating other people. And your question was one of the very few questions that we've got so far in the entire trip, actually, so far, that was focused on what can I do to undo my sins against other people. So I must compliment you on that.
I'll read it out, hey, and then if you want to. If we want to repair the damage we have done, do we have to help that specific group of people that we've damaged, or any group of people?
Yeah. Have you got anything specifically in mind?
The question came up with this chocolate and coffee thing.
Yes.
So if we obviously damaged many people through our consumptions.
And the environment as well.
And the environment.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
And if we want to undo some of that damage, do we then have to help that specific people in that country, or to help that environment in that country?
Yeah.
Or is it if we have poor people in our country that it also is some kind of undoing the damage?
Yes, a very good question. In the spirit, if you were living in the spirit world, of course, accessibility to the people you've damaged is much more readily available, because you can go straight to their place and start helping them straight away. On earth, that's not always possible, obviously, because you might be prevented from going into the country, or there might be restrictions placed on your movements and other things like that, which prevent you from taking direct action sometimes. Not always though, and it's quite rare on earth that you're prevented from taking direct action. But in the spirit world, generally, when you recognise there's been sins that you've engaged that have harmed others, generally you want to help the persons that you've harmed. Mm-hmm. Right, so that's a very common thing, and what that means too is that you've understood not only the law of compensation in the fact that there's a penalty on your own soul for harming those persons, but also that you want to repair the damage. We call it reparation. You want to make reparation to the people you've harmed. So that's as soon as you are sincerely connected to your sin, you'll find you'll have two feelings. One will be, I know I'm guilty of the sin, and the other one will be, I want to do something about that to fix that. Firstly, I want to fix that in myself so I don't do that sin again. But also I want to make reparation to the people I've harmed in my sin. And quite often those two actions are concurrent. They happen at the same time. Where on one hand you're trying to undo the damage within yourself as to why you took the actions you took, finding the cause as to why you decided to do that thing. So in the case of chocolate, coffee, and these kind of seemingly innocent addictions, you would have a look at, well, why do you need those substances? And also the whole attitude we have of getting them as cheaply as possible. It often works out that a cup of coffee in some places is cheaper than the water you buy in the same place, and things like that. So how come it's so cheap? It's cheaper than the water you're buying. So what's going on there? It means, obviously, it's because we need them that cheap to have them every day and to have so much of it. So, what financial problems or what financial attitudes do you have towards these things as well is a part of that feeling of compensation. And then on the other hand, we now are going, oh, now I'm recognising the damage I've done to those people. You know, they are living in poverty for the most part, in countries that are quite pretty and beautiful in the sense that they're all usually mid-equatorial countries, you know, where they're around the equator, they have quite large rainfalls, a tropical environment. But many of those countries are very, very poor and have been, basically the resources of those countries have been raped by Western countries for many, many centuries now. You know, that started once, you know, the Spanish and the English and the Dutch, and they all built ships in the 16th, 15th, 16th century, and then they all went conquering the world, and they found all of these different countries that were full of resources, and that conquering of the world has now continued right the way through to our present day. And in fact, many of these countries speak the language of the country that conquered them, and many of the countries also are still owned or in part owned, and many of their resources owned by the countries that conquered them. So there's a lot of continual damage that's happened over the last, you know, 600 years probably, that has occurred, and we have all, without often knowing it at the beginning, we've all become complicit in the continuing damage of those particular countries. So what do I do about that? I've got the damage of the people in those countries that I've been a part of, and then I've also got the damage of the environment in those countries that I've also been a part of, which also means all the damage to the environment that includes the degradation of species, you know, the endangerment of species as well as the extinction of species. And so you can see that some of the things can't actually be fixed now. So an example of that is there's mass extinction of species through the mid-equatorial region of the Earth that has been going on now for over a century and a half, and that's resulted in the endangerment and also extinction of species in those areas, because whole swathes of tropical rainforest has been cleared for the sake of coffee and tea and for the sake of you know, cocoa and other products. And so, and it's also palm oil also is happening all the way through Indonesia. So you get they rip out all of these rainforests, and of course that means all of the species that are dependent upon those forests now have nowhere to live, and they die off within a generation. Generally, they've got nowhere to nest or breed. They've got no way. Food sources have now dried up. They've got no method of reproducing, and unless they adapt within a year or two, they are gone. Now, some of the animals have adapted within a year or two, but most of them don't. Most of them just don't adapt at all, and they end up disappearing completely. If they're larger animals, they end up in captivity, generally, like orangutans or something like that would end up in captivity. When they're smaller animals, generally they get killed off and don't come back. And that results in the extinction of species. So I'm thinking my innocent little, you know, cuppa a day or whatever, but now that I'm realising, there's a bigger problem here, and there's also the problem to the environment, but the bigger problem is the problem to the humans, because they are living in poverty. They often have higher levels of disease, higher mortality rates for their children. Many children, there's 50 million children dying but before they're 5 years of age in the world at the moment. So that's a lot, isn't it? 50 million children dying before 5 years of age. And a lot of that is as a result of the destruction of their environment, but also the destruction of their way of living and earning enough money to support family, particularly for many of them large families, because many of them don't have, contraception. Is it contraception? Yes. Yeah, contraception. Yeah, it's a long time since I've used that word. And so naturally they have large families, and therefore it's even more difficult for them to care for their families. So you quite often find families, whole families of 20 people living on $1 to $4 US a day, a week, sometimes even. in those countries. And so they're very, very poor. They don't have shoes. They don't have much clothes. Fortunately, they don't need a lot of clothes because of the tropical environment. You know, if they were living here, you know, they'd freeze to death basically. But because they're living there, that doesn't happen. But obviously, they'd have no future. They have no way of, education is scarce because everybody in the family needs to work from a young age. So if you're looking at all of that damage, obviously your heart will, if you're soft, you know, if you're sensitive, your heart will go, wow, that's a lot of damage, you know. What can I do about that? Well, if you think about it, there's a number of things that can be done, isn't there? Firstly, how brave are you? It's going to get down to, isn't it? How brave you are about fixing these things, particularly on Earth, because there's momentum towards extorting and abusing people who are poor. You know, and actually nowadays you're going to find in the future that even middle class start to be poor because of what's happening. It's happening in your environment here a lot, where you've got to pay for every single thing, and they're also reducing the sizes of everything, while at the same time keeping the prices the same. So it means you get less and less for paying the same amount. And so it ends up that more and more people get poor using these economic methods. So the problem is that these countries are very poor, and the people in the countries are very poor, but also the whole world is sort of moving towards more and more poverty the way we're managing the economy. And it's only those people who do things like investing in what I call schemes that are not producing any resources, but like digital currency, things like that. They don't produce anything, but people benefit from people getting on the bandwagon, you know, and the price seemingly goes up and all those kind of things. But it's all very unethical because at the end of the day, there's no real benefit to society through production by those things. So there's a lot of unethical practices in economy, and a lot of people have tried to convince me that digital currency is the answer, and I'm going, but it's just as bad as the currency we've got, really, in terms of ethics. So the problem is that all of these problems are ending up with more and more poverty. So what do? We're many of us middle class here, right? What we classify as middle class, or at least we're not in poverty, in complete poverty. And so what can we do to help these systems change? And how brave are we to start these changes occurring on Earth? That's the real question. So the first thing I would look at is this. Firstly, you're going to need the quality of some courage, aren't you, on Earth, to decide to do something. But if your heart is affected by what you've done in the past and you are sincere, you will develop this courage to get something done. The second thing that needs to happen on Earth is education. So one of the biggest places where you can help is to educate people of what's going on. So in your own environment, so let's say we're here in, say, Austria or Germany or one of these countries where we're doing these things, Belgium with the chocolate and all those kind of things, and we can start educating the environment. Look, this is what's going on for the sake of this particular thing. And we need to be brave enough to put it out there. You know, there's lots of different ways now where you can share information, isn't there? In social media and other things, and also face to face is the really key one. So you could actually start some seminars and with pictures of this is what's happening because of this problem, you know, and invite people along for free. You know, you could run them at nights and weekends or whatever, and eventually people will donate to you. You could start a non-profit where people can donate to, so you can funnel funds to the people in those countries that are being exploited. But also, you could also go to the countries and see what they need, rather than sort of thinking, well, I know what they need. You could go there and actually have a few weeks there or a month there and experience life with them. What is it they need? What do they want? What you know, what is going to improve it for them. And then you'll start seeing that systems are a problem. Economic systems and production systems of the earth are a problem. So then we've got to start going through the process of talking about how unloving those systems are. So now the education process is now expanding to saying how unloving are the companies and governments that are running these systems, and how can, but not only just how unloving they are, but come up, like think about and work through ways in which you can help them become more loving. Does that make sense? So there's no point just criticising something without offering a solution, right? So you want to be able to offer solutions. People are looking for solutions. So you would be involved in the process of trying to help people have solutions to these problems. Like, so what's the solution to people who are growing cocoa plants? You know, obviously they're destroying forests and everything. Isn't it better that maybe they have some other production that doesn't do so much degradation to the rainforest in those locations and to the environment? The problem with cocoa trees is what they do generally, even in the national parks and everything. They clear, like without the government's approval, of course, but they just, because they need the money, you know, they clear parts of the national park and then they plant a whole heap of cocoa trees in the national park. And then, of course, the problem with a lot of subtropical and tropical rainforests is they've got very little topsoil, and you know there are systems that rely on the cover to maintain the quality of the soil and the constant dropping of leaves and everything to improve the quality of the soil. And when you take all of that away, the quality of the soil also degrades very rapidly after that, and sometimes within a generation that's all gone as well through erosion and other problems. So you have to understand the problems, and that's a part of your own education, as well as, like, once you have your own education, you'll see the problems clearly, and then you'll be able to go, what do I do about that? You know, how can I help that? And you can see, once you start this educational process of yourself and you're sincere and you love, you know, you're focused on love. How can I bring more love into it? How can it become a more loving thing? So if people want to eat chocolate, well, that's one thing. You know, there's all these plants and chocolate. Cocoa plants are one of them. And you know, there's sugar cane, which adds to the sugar in the chocolate as well. And then there's other parts, obviously fats and everything that are a part of it as well. But they get added and it gets all refined and there's all processes. But how can I make them all more loving so that they make a lot more sense? Then there's also the process of educating the people who consume as to why they're consuming so much of it, isn't it? And that's, as you saw yesterday, a lot more difficult because it's the consumption that drives the damage, right? So you can't just go, let's go and change it for them in, say, Equatorial Guinea or Ghana or wherever they're growing the cocoa. You've got to go, okay, I've got to change the pattern of the people who are consuming this product. Now that you will find is a lot more difficult because that's now about confronting people's addictions. And people don't like their addictions confronted at all. They're always in a fight with that. But you need to, again, have courage to confront addictions. Your own, obviously, as well as others. Now, if you look at all of that, you can see that if I confront the addictions in people, then people won't consume as much. That will then mean that companies are no longer making a profit. That will then mean that they won't put so much pressure on people like developing the product, right? And that then puts less pressure on the environment. So you can see that this is the more important, really, thing to do. And unfortunately, that's the thing nobody wants you to do, right? This is what Mary and I focus on in our travels. And it's also the area where almost everyone who listens to us doesn't like us. Yeah?
Yeah. Can I say I used to be involved in the top 3?
Mary used to do these things.
And when I met Jesus, I was like, what are you doing talking to all these middle class people? You know, there's people suffering.
Yeah. And Mary and I
now,
used to have disagreement about where should we focus our attention.
Yeah.
Should we go to the poor people who are being damaged and help them, or do we focus on the cause of the damage?
And I actually now feel passionately that the responsibility to make these shifts really lies in Western society. And it's to deal with, it's not just about the environment, you know, within each of us, there's feelings of entitlement, of demand, a feeling that we are more entitled than other people, just through the multi-generational heritage that we have.
The conquering heritage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in all of us. And it comes out in many ways in the way that we live our life. And I feel that dealing with those emotions for yourself is going to be pivotal to making reparation. I don't now understand how I can do that without doing that first myself. Also, the feeling of exploiting. If something is easy, then I will exploit that. If someone has an injury or a neediness, I will exploit that. A lot of us have that in us. It's difficult to admit, you know.
We see that a lot because we provide free seminars and free everything, and people forget that it costs us money to do that, and so they just take it for free, take it for free, take it free. There's people who have even said to us, like, with a lot of pride, that the entire 15 years that they've been listening to Divine Truth, they've never donated a cent to our effort. And because they have that attitude, take for free, it's given for free, so take it for free, take it for free, take it for free, keep taking it for free.
Yeah.
And this is a problem. You know, many of us have this thing of keep consuming. The cheaper it is, the more we consume.
And the feeling that we're entitled to avoid our emotional pain drives a lot of these things. Like really, when we talk about coffee and chocolate and all of those things we're using to comfort emotion, and unless we deal with that desire within ourselves, it's difficult to understand how we will be leaders in education and leaders in change, because how will we think of the systems, you know? I'm not saying do nothing. I'm not disputing what Jesus is saying. I think if you do, but you must be committed to that spiritual work for it to be effective. And I think we've got to be careful of being, fix me is really the biggest, because
so these are sort of, you know, you can say courage is going to be required, but fix me first, then confront the addictions in others, then try to solve the issues of education and other things in the companies and everything that exploit these people, then try to help the people.
Yeah. And I think in the process of fixing you will be led to action. Your heart will pull you towards action. And I think you'll also see the ways that you've exploited people in your own society and the way your greed has caused you to consume more than you need and all of those things. But I do feel that it's a spiritual solution, and I think we're the people to do that. Yeah.
Can we go up to that with Mike? Seven.
Just a quick question. I'm actually a Catholic.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how you feel about the role of confession, especially because since my partner passed away a few years ago, there's obviously things that I regret, sins.
Can we stay on this topic though? You're asking the role of confession when it comes to seeing what you've done wrong?
Is that what
No,
you're asking?
it was about fixing your sins.
Yeah,
Okay.
fixing your own sins. Yeah.
And
Okay.
if somebody's passed and there's nothing you can do about it physically, but you're sorry about what you've done to them,
True.
then I found that confession was actually very useful and made me feel a lot lighter. As long as it's genuine and you know you wouldn't do it again.
Well, this is the thing, Stephen.
Yeah.
When you say, you know you wouldn't do it again, that requires that you get rid of the emotional reason why you did the thing in the first place. And confession doesn't fix that. So confession is a good start to the process of repentance, because what it does, you're acknowledging that you did wrong, right? but it doesn't fix the reason why you did wrong. The reason why you did wrong is there's an emotional reason inside of you as to why you did wrong. And from God's perspective, that needs to be identified and fixed. And this is what we notice most people don't do. So they confess, they feel bad, they feel guilt, and then they confess, I feel guilty, I feel bad, I did the wrong thing, and all of that kind of thing. And they want forgiveness, but they want forgiveness without having to find the reason why they did the wrong thing in the first place.
Well, I do know the reasons. I feel that I have changed over, 50 years. So I know that, for example, it might have been greed at the time, or this fixation on earning money or whatever.
Yeah.
But now my values are completely changed and it's reassessed. So I do feel as if I'm
But the emotional reason why though still remains in you. So what you've done is you've used your mind to make adjustments in your life, knowing what you've done is you've seen the result and you've gone, that result was bad. I feel bad and guilty about that. I'm sorry for that. I'm going to now change my life by taking some action. And you have. So I'm not disputing that. But what I'm also saying is that process still leaves the emotion inside. You've got to go further than that, is what I'm saying to you. And this is something that, so what you've done is what I would classify as the natural love way of becoming clearer. But eventually, on the natural love way, you're going to have to find the emotion that drove the greed. So greed wasn't the emotion, greed was the effect of the emotion. And the actual emotion needs to be also addressed if you really want to become completely clear of ever doing it again. And this is something that most people don't properly understand on earth. And so what they do is they confess, they go through the process of feeling sorry, and then what they do is they change their actions from that point on, right? And they change their life from that point on. And generally, that's as far as they go. That's as far as most people feel they need to go or feel driven to go. But God's going to require more of you than that, is what I'm saying to you.
Did your wife have abdominal surgery? Did she have cancer?
Yeah.
Yeah. And is she, because I feel her,
You want to, we can talk to
I'll
her
try,
potentially.
yeah. I feel like,
We're getting a bit off the subject now, though.
yeah,
But I think we've answered the other subject, haven't we?
I think we have.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
If you can do something, Mary, to contact her, that I would really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just felt the lady who had cancer who passed, and she, the issue that you're both having is that she can see that you have a lot of regrets about the early part of your relationship. But actually, yeah. But the issue is that she's wanting to reassure you that don't worry about that, Stephen. I still love you, and the challenge.
Try to let her talk directly, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're comfortable with that. Mary will let her talk directly until such time as she feels she's teaching you untruth. Does that make sense? If she wants to do that. She's never done this before, so your wife has never talked to a person on earth directly before, so it's a bit, she doesn't really know what to do, so try to sort that out.
Yeah, so she's just saying, I love you, Stephen, I love you, darling, I miss you too, I miss you very much, and I know you miss me. I'm sorry that I had to go, and I don't want you to feel bad about anything. I know
this is her problem.
Yeah. I know that you that my passing really caused you to question yourself and question in your missing of me. It made you feel like you should have done better, that you could have been a better man. but I want you to know that I'm still around you and that I still love you and that I wish I could hold you and I wish I could be with you often. I wish you would believe I'm with you because I am, and you can talk to me. You don't, I hear you when you talk to me. Yeah. That.
What was your wife's name, Steve?
Well, it was my partner actually, Beata. Beata.
Did you have children? I don't think you had children. No. The feeling I have from her is like, you guys were in it together, and it was like she really wanted to fight and stay alive with you. But I feel the trouble that she's having is that she's staying with you rather than moving forward with her life. She feels responsible for you, and she feels responsible for your sadness. Yeah. And she's finding, she just wants to reassure you, and that she can see that you're really trying to do things well. But I feel so this is me now, I feel there's a problem there where there are sadnesses that she needs to deal with from your relationship, and there are things
and can I say she's ignoring them?
Yeah. That she felt very responsible for making you feel good in her life, and partly that's what caused her to develop cancer. Of course, it originated from before your relationship, but she feels really benefited from coming here with you this weekend, and that she feels like just listen. She's
saying listen more rather than argue. But anyway,
and she knows from being here, she's met other spirits who can help her, and she is starting to see that there were issues that she has to deal with for herself. She feels like if she just loved you enough, and especially after her passing, that it would be okay. Everything that was in the past would be okay because, your love would sort of heal that. But now she can see she needs to do some things for herself, and you need to do some things for yourself in order for you to really love each other. And it's that you're going to have to both go through separation. Like, she feels like she hasn't separated from you yet, even though she passed. And it's just like, I love you, and I'm going to sort of go my own way for a little bit. And you can still talk to me, but I can see that I need to fix some things in myself, is what she's saying. Yeah.
Her cancer was caused by some unloving treatment she had towards herself.
Yeah.
And she's learning that in order to fix the results of it, she needs to fix the cause of that, which is very much related to her upbringing, her father, and a number of other factors. So, and also this desire she had to earn her worth by making a man feel good about himself, which is one of the main emotions that drove her to get the type of cancer she ended up with.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want to ask her?
You want to ask her?
What's everyday life like in the spirit world? What do you do on a normal day?
Okay, good question. Well, part of my problem is that I've been trying to have my everyday with you.
Yeah, she hasn't really experienced everyday life in the spirit world yet because of her attachment to you.
I've been missing you and wanting to be with you in the mornings, like we used to be together in the mornings. And I'm quite frightened of what the next step will be, but also I feel more faith after meeting some spirits here that it will be good for me, and I'll come back and let you know. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Just to let her know that I will find her.
You can tell her directly.
That's what she said. I hear you.
Yeah, she hears you.
You need faith.
You don't need to do it through Mary.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Good. Yeah, so a lot of times we don't realise that we can. So in answer to your question, Steve, a lot of times we think if I feel sorry, that's the feeling of guilt, and then I repent by confession, confessing my actions and acknowledging that I took those actions. The majority, and then also we change our own life. The majority of people then feel that's it. That I'm forgiven now, and you're not. That's not the end of it. The end of it will be once you decide you've got to do two more things. One of them is you need to repair the problems you engaged by repairing it, if not with the person, at least with the people who are similar to the person. So in other words, your attitude to women needs to be repaired. And then on top of that, the emotional reason why you felt you needed a woman to sort of prop you up emotionally and make you feel good about yourself emotionally needs to be addressed. And those things aren't addressed. So you need to go through the entire thing of that in order for full forgiveness and repentance to occur. Now, Mary and I did a series of videos on the subject of forgiveness and repentance. I think there's a total of 13 5-hour videos on that subject, and that you'll find on our website if you're more interested in what's involved in the process, the proper process of repentance and forgiveness. So I'm not saying that confession is useless, but I'm saying it's only one part of the steps that need to be undertaken from God's perspective. All right.
All right.
So, Doris, you're happy with what we talked about there?
No, that's not pile. You're in so, okay. Do you want some rapid ones, or do you want some?
Let's give you some rapid ones.
This one here. Is that rapid, or are you going to want to talk a long time about that?
Is that a question?
Is it
Agata?
Agate?
Maybe it's me.
It's Agneta. I thought it was Agneta. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is it not selfish to long for God's love if you do it to be a happy being? It's a good question. And so the question is, if I'm longing for God's love just so that I can be happier, is that not a selfish thing? And if it is a selfish thing, then why would God give me love under those circumstances? Is also part of the question, isn't it, really? So, yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? The feeling of longing for love, is it selfish? Is a good question. So let's say in a relationship, I will long for love from Mary, and I will also I want to give her my love, right? So is the action of longing for her love selfish? And if it is, then what do I do about that, if it is selfish? Okay, so let's look at longing versus
Neediness.
Can you see straight away, using those other words, you can start to see that there is a big difference between what I would call a passionate longing, right, and what I'd call demand or need or expectation. So the real issue becomes this. If I am in this state, any one of these states, when I think I'm longing for God's love, then it's not a passion just for God's love. It's not a passion just to receive it. There's all these things of going, and this comes from our upbringing a lot too, by the way. There's this general feeling in society that if you ask for something from your mum and dad, they should give it to you. That's a general feeling. And in fact, that feeling is growing amongst younger children. I don't know if you've noticed that, but usually the younger the person is, the more they even have that feeling. They should get everything they ask for. Everything. Now, that would indicate a demand or an expectation. So therefore, a person who's having that demand or expectation is no longer longing. A longing is this heartfelt desire just to receive, but no expectation to receive. Yeah. And that is a more refined, you can say the longing is a sincere state. So that's sincerity. And these are insincere, aren't they? Because these are more selfish in motivation, and they also don't honour the fact that what you're longing for is a gift.
Is it connected with love of self too?
The longing, you mean, or?
Yeah, if you have no love of self, is it easier?
Oh, well, that's a different matter altogether now, isn't it?
And it's not connected.
Well, no, it is connected, yes, but that's sort of like a different issue.
Okay.
These are things like where we're just fundamentally selfish.
Like,
In
just
other words-
God, take away my pain,
Yeah,
I
in
want to
other
be
words,
happier.
we think
Yeah.
we're the most important person in the universe and God should fix everything for me. You know, that's sort of these feelings, which means we have a high opinion of ourselves. But what you're now talking about is having a low opinion of yourself, right? Yes, now having a low opinion of yourself is interesting because what it does is it prevents love from flowing to you because you feel you're unworthy to receive it. Yeah? And so you could say the longing then gets tainted by a feeling of unworthiness, right? And in other words, we are no longer really longing for something because we feel unworthy of receiving. Now, what we find when we're talking to groups of people is generally they either unworthy. I'm a bit tired. Unworthy. So what we find in our travels is that when we talk about receiving love, there's groups of people who have quite a high opinion of themselves, which, by the way, many of you here do. And so you have these things towards God if you think of God at all. Now that obviously is not a sincere longing, right? But then there's another group of people who feel like that they're insignificant and unequal to others, and they feel like God wouldn't want to know them, and they feel like God wouldn't care about them, and things like that, right? And that's a lot because they've had a childhood where nobody cared about them, and nobody really wanted to know them, and nobody really wanted to know the person themselves. And so they end up feeling this feeling, and then they want God to make that feeling go away.
Yeah.
But that would then mean that the person who's feeling unworthy is no longer sincere in their longing. Because wanting God to make a feeling go away, God's going to go, well, the feeling's yours. You need to let yourself feel it so it goes away. You follow?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the issue then becomes, well, yes, there are many times where we have what we think is a longing, but there are demands, needs, and expectations that we're projecting at God. Or we think we're unworthy to receive as well, and then we don't even ask God. We don't even long anymore for anything. We just think, what's the point? He's not going to respond. He's not going to care about me. Now, you can see that unless we deal with that emotion, it's unlikely we'll have a sincere longing. Does that make sense? Yep. So both conditions need to be addressed in order to have a relationship with God. The condition that we think we're pretty good and that we should be able to demand and get whatever we want. That needs to be addressed. But also the condition that we think we're unworthy and we're not allowed to receive because we're unworthy, or that God won't listen to us because we're unworthy, that also needs to be addressed in order for our longing to be sincere.
This is essential.
It's essential.
Yeah.
Of all the problems that I've faced in this life, the very hardest thing I've found to deal with is lack of love of self.
Yeah.
And I'm still doing it. And the reason why I'm looking like I'm growing old and everything is all because of the lack of love of self. What I now, with regard to loving others, have ironed out most of my issues. But when it comes to loving self, I've still got quite a number to deal with. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I found them especially difficult because from the time of my being born, I've been attacked by large groups of spirits my entire life, right? And now, on the average, like I said a few days ago, I get attacked on the average all day, every day, by millions of spirits, all the time. And it's very hard under those circumstances where you're getting attacked all the time or pulled down all the time to actually develop a sense of love of self. Does that make sense? Now, for many of you, it's not like that. You've only had like family attacking you when you were little, or not being, when you were little, or you're in abusive relationships when you were growing up, or those kind of things. But even so, it's the same feelings, and they are difficult to address. Mary and I both are finding them the most difficult to address. Make sense?
Yes.
So it's interesting because even though Mary and I are finding the most difficult to address, I also acknowledge that these feelings are even more difficult to address than these feelings. So what I notice is the people who have these feelings, but who do feel worthy, are actually quite arrogant, and arrogance is even harder to address than having a low sense of your own worth.
And on top of this, I always go, maybe it's the other way around. So I'm really stuck.
Yes, so this is another problem, that when you have a low sense of your worth, you're very prone to receiving information from other people who are trying to continually pull down your worth. And unfortunately, that means that there's usually a few spirits around you who are trying to keep you in a place of low worth. And so that is something you also need to address. And both Mary and I have had to go through those things and address those things so that we could become free of the influences and particularly the words they use and the attacking attitudes they have. So with me, even while I'm teaching you, I've got millions of spirits telling me, you're an idiot, why are you doing this for? These people are not listening anyway, why don't you just give up? Nobody really cares anyway. There's all these things going on all the time. And unless I deal with some things inside of myself, I'll keep hearing them. Yeah? And also acting upon them, if I'm not careful. For me, ethics stops me from acting upon them, but it is hard to put up with the dealing with them all the time. That makes sense? Yeah.
Can I just ask you, because obviously a lot of unworthy feelings within you, but what I observe is that you still have a sincere longing for God, and that's something to do with your attitude to God, or your understanding of God, or it just might help people who are feeling
it's to do
unworthy.
with
Humility.
Once you understand your position in relationship to God, the problem with me still is that I still understand my position as being lesser than God feels it is. So I get this from God all the time. It's like God's trying to tell me, no, it's not as bad as I think it is. But one of the things that helps me a lot is perspective. I do understand that God is an infinite being and I am finite.
Yes, so you're not arrogant about your unworthiness. You're
That's
willing
right.
to.
So I feel unworthy, but I'm willing to deal with it.
And you're willing to still ask for God's opinion on that.
Yes.
Whereas a lot of us get almost arrogant in our unworthiness, don't we?
We do.
I know that God wouldn't want.
We
to
get
have
sort of
anything to do with
definite
me.
about it. We go, he's not going to be interested in me, so why even bother? So it's more like an angry, definite feeling of not even trying to develop a relationship with God then. For me, it's not like that. For me, it's more like, no, I know I'm in error. Particularly with the issue of self-love. I know I'm in error. I need to deal with it. And for the last probably 10 years in particular, but the last probably 4 or 5 years for me in particular, I've been really focused on it. And I have been finding it hard, but I have made significant inroads in it too. In fact, just in Belgium last week, it was just last week, two weeks ago, because it feels like longer than that. But when I was getting attacked by large groups of spirits, I had a really big cry for about 6 hours, and something left me because I feel my bowels started to work better than it's ever worked before, and things started to improve a bit with me with regard to my sense of myself. So I got attacked by all those spirits, but that triggered me into the emotion. Once I felt the emotion, that the attack alleviated, it stopped the attack. I said to Mary, after being attacked for a solid 4 weeks, probably up to there, but particularly really bad once we arrived in Belgium, I said to Mary, after I had that cry, I said to Mary, I'm going to get better now. I could feel I was going to get better now. So it's about being humble to the process of processing through the emotions. Okay? Now, if you're not humble to the emotion, then you're going to project that emotion in your relationship with God. So if you're not humble to being unworthy, you're going to say, I am unworthy, and you're going to be so definite about it that you're not going to have a sincere longing for God's love. So you've got to be humble enough to just feel what you feel. So there's many times when I come away from a group like this, where there's lots of projections, most of you don't realise how uncomfortable they are, particularly a lot of condescension and internal feelings of ridicule at times, a lot of judgment and criticism, and a lot of criticism about what I'm saying as well frequently. So sometimes I come away from a group and I overcry for a whole day, right? But that doesn't stop me from doing the next group. Does that make sense? If you're humble, it's a good thing you're doing, so you'll do it. Yeah. So it's very important that this feeling is addressed, but also that it's dealt with in a proactive manner and not in a manner where you're angry about it, about dealing with it. Yeah? But rather in a more positive manner where you're just humble. This is what I feel, and I need to work through why I feel it. Now, for myself, I know the reason why I feel it is because I'm getting attacked all the time. And I've been attacked ever since I was a little child. Right from the time of birth. I've had people wanting to kill me since I was born. So, with large groups of people wanting to kill you, if you're not careful, you'll start thinking you're not worth living, right? You're not worth anything. And so, I know that's the reason, and that's what I've got to grieve. The more I grieve that, and that's partly what I grieved in Brussels 2 weeks ago, the more I grieve that, the less I feel like I'm unworthy. And the less I feel like I deserve that attack. Right? So very important to address that emotion, because that's going to stop you from having a sincere longing for God's love. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question.
All right, Dylan, do you want to go?
That was meant to be a quick one.
That's right. Are these quick ones? Because otherwise, if they're not, let's not do
Can
them.
trading on the stock exchange or
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Forex?
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 Yes.
Yes.
Be loving? No.
There's three actually.
How do I get over thinking I know it all? Get some perspective. It might sound funny, but it's true. If you think you know it all, you haven't got perspective.
It's a good question though, because at least you're aware that you know it, that you think you know it all. A lot of people who think they know it all don't even acknowledge that.
Yeah. Now, with trading on the stock exchange and everything, the world's economic system is very, very unloving. When you're trading, you are making money off of the losses of others or the imaginary value of a thing. Now, there are things on earth that do have value, such as, homes for people, food for people, and all of these other kinds of things. But there's a lot of things that are on the stock exchange that have no value to humanity whatsoever. In fact, they are purposefully degrading humanity. An example of that is like Facebook. It degrades humanity. It feeds addiction. That's its only purpose. Totally degradation. And most companies, unfortunately, that are listed on the stock exchange are trading in information only, and they're using your information in an unloving manner. So the reality is that it's very, very hard. Make it, when you say, is it trading on the stock exchange can be loving? If the stock exchange could become loving, you could turn it into a way of raising funds for good ventures, couldn't you? You could turn it into that. But see, even the idea that you should make money from doing nothing yourself is unethical. Right? So don't think it isn't, it is unethical. If you think it's good to make money from doing nothing, all I've got to do is put a bit of money and I get more money back without having done a single thing to do that aside from putting the money in, then you are unethical. Simple as that. Right? And anything based on a lack of ethics, God is trying to destroy. So God's trying to destroy the stock exchange. So you using it is propping it up. So no, definitely not.
All right, and the last one.
Do you want to ask about that? Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, keep your hand up, otherwise I can't see.
So I have some Bitcoin, but
Yep.
if I sell it, then I made some money. So I'm wondering.
Well, now you've got it. Get rid of it and use the money for a loving purpose. At the moment, it's being used for nothing or an unloving purpose.
Okay.
Yep. So use it for a loving purpose. Do something with it that's going to benefit the world, not just yourself. Because you think about it, most people have investments just to benefit themselves first. It's fundamentally a selfish system. And so this is why, and to be frank with you, I can't say enough bad about these systems. And the majority of people who hear me say these things want to fight and argue with me to the end of time. I understand that. But at the end of the day, if you need God's opinion, you'd be disgusted with the way in which the world's economy is running.
So if I donate it to you guys, is that?
Well, now what you're doing is you're saying, I don't know what to do myself with the money, so let's give it to someone who I think will use it right. Now, I'm not against you donating your funds to me, because I know I'm going to use it not for selfish purposes, right? I know that, but I would prefer to see you decide on what it is you're passionate about that's unselfish and that was going to help the world, and you do something about that cause.
Because that helps you develop your will,
Yeah.
which is, remember, God's desire for you. Develop
Makes
your
sense.
loving will.
Yep. So yeah, there's all these digital currencies now where people are earning a lot of funds from, and there's also the stock exchange where people are investing and making money off the loss of other people, but also off of a lot of things that don't produce anything in the world. And then we say, now I've got funds, now I can do the right thing with those funds. Crap. You just earned them in the wrong way. So how can you do the right thing with them, right? So my feeling is if you're in these systems, my feeling would be get out of them and do something more positive with them. To be frank with you, there's many people on earth, particularly in third world, that don't even have a home to live in. Well, build one for them. In a third world, it takes less than $10,000 to build a home for somebody, right? Go and build 5 if you've got that, for them. Do something positive so that somebody's actually benefiting. Now, I'm not saying provide it necessarily for free to them, because they need to also learn that everything has a cost associated. You've got to maintain it and other things like that. But if you do something like that with your funds, that will have a benefit to people, and rather than just sticking in a financial institution or a financial blockchain that basically is just sitting there, chewing up server space, chewing up resources, chewing up power, chewing up, if you understood how much power goes into one server farm just for the sake of keeping Bitcoin and other blockchains alive, you'd be shocked. right? Because we don't look at all of that. We don't look at all the damage we do. And so, yeah, the world's financial system, including all the new ones, all the digital currency ones, there's only one digital currency one that I could see that had more ethics in it than any other, and that was one not based on, it was blockchain, but not based on processing power. It was based on storage, spare storage. So the reality is all around the world there's these servers, like our servers that we use to share truth with you, and there's spare storage on it. Now you could maybe use that, as a method, because you're not drawing more power. But all of these blockchains where people mine them, they're using exorbitant amounts of power to mine more and more funds out of them. And basically, these chains are for the rich, right? Because you need to even own them, you need to have money to start with, And then you look at all the poor people; they don't even have a bank to go to. They don't even have money to bank. They are living hand to mouth, every single day of their lives, right? So this big, giant, disgusting economic world we live in has huge problems, and if we want to become more loving, we need to start participating in the destruction of it.
And this is the issue with getting Jesus to do rapid fire questions.
So there was a no answer to that right at the beginning, wasn't
there? Yeah. All right.
Let's go.
No. Yeah, no.
Yeah, this one question. If I could only focus on one thing, praying for divine love or truth, loving God, developing faith, which one should I focus on? That was, is it Eric? Yep. So let's get the mic to Eric. Why would you only want to focus on one thing?
I like to simplify my life.
Yeah, but that is like one thing when there's a lot of things that are good. It wouldn't make sense.
I remember like the Bible quote, and I think Matthew 6:33.
Yeah.
You only focus on God and His righteousness, everything will come.
If you're focusing on God isn't one thing. God's an infinite being. There's a lot of parts to God. If you focus on God, it won't be just one thing.
I thought that God is one thing. Like it's one singular monotheism. So I thought it was like one.
Well, there's one God you're focusing on, but there's a lot of things that, when we're talking about things, not God, and there's a lot of things I would focus on, not just one.
Yeah, so there's not one single, like God is one, I could
be humble.
Focus.
Be humble.
So,
yeah. Just feel what I just said.
Yeah.
You're already
overwhelmed, like I don't want to feel the complexity of it.
Correct. See, as soon as you're starting to be humble, you go, there's a lot of things I could be focusing on. Now I feel overwhelmed. I don't want to feel overwhelmed, so tell me one thing. You see the motivation for the question? Yeah. So be humble first. When you look at your questions, be humble. And then when you're humble, you will see, there's my emotion. The emotion I'm trying to avoid is overwhelmed.
It's all right. It's all right. Yeah.
It's overwhelmed. That's the emotion I'm trying to avoid, isn't it? So it's interesting. When I'm humble, I start to feel my motivation for asking the question. And because my motivation is impure, any answer somebody provides, you're going to start filtering out through the impurity of the thing you're trying to avoid. You understand? This is a very important thing to learn. So this emotion needs to be felt. And for many people, particularly many people who have had everything sort of provided to them, so in particular people in Western society have a lot provided to them. Like, I know of people in the third world, they're 25 years age, which is, what age are you?
26, yeah.
Yeah, it's similar to your age, right? That they have 18 people to care for. They've got a wife, children, extended family, uncles, aunts, everything, all living in their home. One home, no walls, no dirt floor, and they've got to provide for 18 people and they're 25 years old. Almost everybody in the West never experiences that when they're 25 years old. When I was 25 years old, I had 2 children. But even that's quite unusual nowadays, isn't it? Usually having children is in your 30s or something like that nowadays, right? And so we don't realise it, but we are really quite, what I would classify as, I don't know, shall we be blunt and just call it weak? In the sense of weak character. We're used to having everything put on our plate, and so when 2 things are put out, when two things are demanded from our plate, we go, oh, I'm overwhelmed now. I can't decide which one I should give. You know, those kind of things. So we get overwhelmed in Western society. We get overwhelmed very easily, and in particular, we get overwhelmed with having to feel some emotion. Right? Now that is not being humble. And then what happens is the lack of humility causes us to ask the question, to ask questions that support our lack of humility. So in other words, how can I avoid being overwhelmed? Just give me one thing to do. But I don't want to give you one thing to do. I want to give you at least 5 things to do. Does that make sense? What are those 5 things I want to give you to do?
It's faith.
The first one is
Humility, yeah.
Yeah, I want you to be humble. I want you to develop humility.
Yeah, and then faith.
I need some faith, so I want you to start having faith in your spiritual self, your soul, your life, your God. You know, God's laws, God's love. Start developing faith in all of these different areas. Now, faith also is things like passion for your future. What do you want? What kind of direction you want for your future? Remember, that's what faith is motivating you towards. So we're talking about qualities like desire as well in there, in the issue of faith. Every one of these qualities have some points, right? Faith has desire, passion, longing, future consideration. You know, there's so many aspects to faith. So with faith, what's the next one?
Love.
Well, before then,
Truth.
Yeah, truth, because you need to have some truth to see that even love is possible, right? So truth has a lot of sub-aspects too. It's like honesty, transparency, openness, emotional openness, being yourself around people, but also being truthful with them. Like if someone asks you a question, you go, well, they're not going to like my answer, but this is my answer. So I'll tell them. That's all an aspect of truth. Develop some truth, yeah? Now it's
love.
Possibility of love. Do I want to love other people, and do I want to love myself? Do I want to learn what love of other people looks like and how it's properly exercised from God's perspective? Or do I just want to do what is the injured version of love, which is, the injured version is addiction. For a lot of people on earth, love equals addiction. Love equals, like, I want something, I'm addicted to something, loving me means I get it. So if you ask an alcoholic what he wants, he's going to say, more alcohol. He thinks you're loving him, giving him more alcohol. You give him food, what do I want that for? I want alcohol. So when you give him food, he thinks you're not loving him. In fact, I've had a man who I gave food to, he asked me for money, and instead of giving money, I gave him some food. And he threw it at me. So it was like, you know what I mean? He was being loved, but he didn't want love, right? He wanted addiction. Okay? What else? Action. Taking action about all those things. Yeah? So most of us in that process will start feeling overwhelmed at all different times. We go, oh, there's this to do with, oh, there's that to do with, oh no, there's that to do with too, and oh, there's my sin as well, oh God, and feel it, be humble.
You said one word that really hit me, it was the word weak.
Yeah.
And I feel very weak, I can see it in my body, like it's my emotion.
Yes, we in Western society, we are particularly emotionally and spiritually weak. We don't have much character. And what I mean by character is we don't have much moral fortitude. We don't go, wow, these things are good, so I should be doing them. We go, give me one of them to do, because doing 5 of them is too much. And that's because in our childhoods we've been taught you only need to do a little bit, just enough to pass, or just enough to get an A, or just enough, not be passionate about it. Just do enough to get you through life. And in a lot of times we've been there's a term, isn't it? Mollycoddled. I don't know if that's a term. How do you put that term in German? What's that? When somebody's nursed you and babied you and
Verhätschelt, ja.
So say that in the mic for me.
Verhätschelt.
Yeah. So mollycoddled and nursed and
you're
babied.
okay, darling, don't worry.
And so
it's too hard, and
we grow up being an adult, but we're still really a child who wants that. And that's where the emotional overwhelm feeling comes from. Yeah. I sort of, in my Mary's life, it's like, it's a busy life, trust me. It's like, a lot of people think we've had a rest for 5 years before we came, right? And it's not like that at all. It's like, we are working flat out 12 hours a day for the most part, right? And we have to, because of the lack of love of self, we have to teach ourselves to get rest. That's how busy we are. And in terms of doing things, getting things done, being productive in life, you will come to enjoy that. You will come to enjoy being involved in this, involved in that, and enjoy, the productivity of your life. Doing things in particular to benefit others will make you feel more proud of yourself. Yeah.
It's like the overwhelm. You sort of need to go through the overwhelm to realise your full potential. At the moment, when we're in the weakened character, we think, oh, I couldn't possibly, or I can't, But the more you let yourself have desire and be overwhelmed, then you realise, oh, I can do this and more, if I just keep letting myself be overwhelmed.
The bigger your emotional capacity, remember yesterday we said God wants to stretch your emotional capacity. The bigger your emotional capacity, the more you can handle. For many of us on earth, we have very small, tiny emotional capacity. There's this, you think of your soul, what's happened is it's shriveled up and dried up and dried up and shriveled up to the point where it's so tiny that you can barely handle anything, right? In fact, a lot of people, when they pass in the spirit world, say their soul has died. That's how dried up it has become. So what happens, though, is if the more you get stressed, the more of love you receive, in particular from God, the more you get stressed emotionally, the more you deal with your own emotions, the more you're capable of dealing with more emotion, you become, your emotional capacity expands. You can handle more things. That's a good thing. You'll end up with a lot of confidence in yourself, being able to handle anything. And that's a good thing.
So true strength is to be willing to be overwhelmed and to embody the 5 things.
Correct.
Yeah, very strong.
That make you strong. Yeah, make you strong. We just go back to
Isabella,
Can I ask a question to the further question about the money and the Bitcoin?
All right, do we want to go back there? I don't know if I want to go back there. There's more important things.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, of course, that it's not ethical to deal with those things, because you need to become in harmony with love, you're going to need to deal with ethics in your life. That's a fact of life. And a lot of things I say are going to challenge you, but you're going to have to be humble. Let yourself feel about, is there love in this thing? And that's a general rule for most questions you can ask. Is there love in it? Am I loving others? Am I loving myself doing this? Is it loving for me to put a tiny little bit of personal effort in the sense of my money, and then from whatever happens out there from somebody else's effort, I get back a larger amount of money? Is that really loving? And also, is it sustainable for the whole world for this to occur? Are we going there, are we?
Are we going to Bitcoin?
Let's go back there. Let's go back to today.
What if it's not my money? I inherited from my grandma, but from my mom decided that I should get it. So it's not from my grandma.
There's no problem inheriting money. What are you going to do with it?
I think it's not for me. It was not the purpose to go to me.
Well, it is. It's arrived in your care.
Yeah.
Now you have a responsibility.
Yeah.
Are you going to love people with it? Are you going to love, use your money to love, or are you going to use your money for selfish purposes? Or are you just going to decide, I'm not going to make a decision at all, I'm just going to store it for a rainy day?
What's the worst thing you can do out of those
before
three?
that, let me just say, don't you think that this is a rainy day? Like, look at the state of the world. Does it look great to you? No. So we're in a rainy day. So now's the time to use it. Yeah? Mary's going to say.
Well, I was just going to say you've got three options: store it, use it selfishly, or use it lovingly. To my mind,
Not to Mary's mind.
to God's feelings.
Yes.
To God's feelings, storing it is the worst thing you can do.
Yes.
Even if you use it selfishly, you might learn something. You know, there'll be compensation. You might engage your will. You know, you might discover skills you have or what have you.
Yeah.
Obviously, the best thing to do is use it lovingly, because you're still going to engage your will and you're still going to learn lessons. But the worst thing you can do is put off the decision, because nobody's benefiting except.
Yeah. Now that's different if you're saving for a particular purpose.
Yeah, of
obviously,
course.
then you're going to save for that. But
That would be the question: who am I and what do I do in this world?
yeah, and it's like, you know, for the majority of people, what we do is we have a certain, when it comes to our finances, we have a certain amount of fear associated with finances. For some of us, the fear is, I'm not really worthy of getting this inheritance. So what I'll do is just throw it in the bank, or throw it in an investment, or throw it in Bitcoin, or do something. And then that thing gives me more money, and I go, I still don't know what to do with it. Or I still aren't making choices or decisions to do something loving with it. We could use our funds to do something loving. And also, by the way, I must say, if you use your funds to do something loving, you will find many, many rewards from that, including the potential of having more money to do something loving. Because God wants to give more money to the people who are doing loving things. His laws want to give more money to the people who are going to do loving things, right? So the key is, do you love money, or do you love people and you want to do loving things for people? If you love money, you will store it. If you love money, you will live in fear with it. If you love money, you will build, what I said in the first century, you would build more, bigger storehouses for your money. You will find other ways to make more money and so forth. But at the end of the day, no good will come from it. And to be frank, the penalties associated with this behaviour in the spirit world are great. There are many people in the depths of hell who have only got there because of how they treated their money. So this is something with ethics, isn't it? So if I have been given this gift, doesn't matter where it came from. It could come from people donating, or it could come from, to you for a cause. It could come from an inheritance. It could come from the fact you had 5 properties and you sold 4 of them. It could come from all sorts of sources. At the end of the day, it's how you use it lovingly that's going to be a measure of your character. Now, I think we can move on from that subject, yes?
I think it's well covered.
Well covered.
Okay.
Thanks, AJ. Well covered.
All right. Do you want to talk about faith or getting truth from God? Let's do faith first, hey?
Well, hang on a sec. There were some other ones that were here.
There's this one.
Well, you've selected all the good ones, haven't you?
Yeah, the ones we said last time.
Yeah. I'm going to select some not so good. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Somebody asked the question, and I won't embarrass you by saying who it was. What sphere am I in?
What was the question?
What sphere of the spirit world is my soul developer?
Not yours, theirs.
Yeah.
It was me.
Yes.
That was you, but also some others. So it was a question asked by another. Okay. The heavens. Yep. That actually applies to almost everybody here. Not everybody, but almost.
That's why I feel that so these attacks and CEOs usually.
Microphone.
That's why I'm heavily attacked by these spirits still. They're claiming I belong to them.
No, that's not why.
That's not why you
Oh,
are.
it's not why.
That is happening.
I want to talk
That's right.
about the spirit attack as well. So some of you are under spirit attack, and I want to talk a bit about spirit attack. So let's just do that just briefly.
Leave it with
Leave
you.
it with. So for yourself, Nicholas, the spirit attack you're under is not because you're dark. And it's true that most of us here are in the health in terms of development. And the main reason why that is actually because we haven't processed much emotion and we haven't grown much in love. And we've carried a lot of sin that we don't recognize. Makes sense? But one sin that you're committing quite strongly, which is actually the cause of most of your problems, and that is the sin of needing to be special.
And a number of people here have that sin.
A number of you have this, mostly young men, but many people we meet have this problem. They need to feel that they're special. Now, when you need to feel like you're special, you attract a whole heap of spirits who now want to barter with you. They try to make you feel special, but the
They give me
cost.
something.
Sorry?
They give me something.
They give you the feeling that you're special,
Uh-huh.
right? But they want something in return. They want control
Yeah.
of your life,
Power and they
Power
control me.
over
They
you.
own the power so much.
Correct.
And I felt 2 days ago I was masturbating myself, and after I felt that I was under the power and the control. It said, I'm your master, and I said, no, you're not.
Yeah.
It's God, my master, and I was on the ground, and I said, no, you're not, but they're here. So using my sexuality is like a big horse.
Big area.
Big area of holes for you, yes, the sexuality, yes. But again, this is the bigger problem.
Because I want to feel special.
Yeah. And you don't feel special.
No.
No, but you need to go through being humble to feel the emotion that you're not special, right? But you want to be worth more than others.
I think I'm in the other way, like I feel unworthy and.
Oh, I agree.
You want to avoid that feeling so much
That
that
you
you're
want the
willing to
opposite
have
to it.
interactions with spirits who
Oh,
want power, and then they
okay.
give you this feeling, I'm powerful, I'm special, I know
They make
things.
you feel like you know things. They make you feel like you're better than other people because they can't see things that you can see.
So I feel so unworthy inside me, like it's not solved, that I act like I want everyone to feel like I'm special, I'm over the other ones.
Yeah.
Then I'm very alone, in fact.
Oh, of course you are, but actually not alone from a spiritual perspective because you've got a posse, of spirits.
Like an openness to
And yeah,
spirits.
A posse, you know what a posse
Sorry, I
is?
don't know
It's,
what
like the cowboys used to ride together.
together in a group
That's
So you've got a
what we call
group
it, a
of
posse in
spirits.
English.
who are all thinking, yeah, if we make Nicholas feel special, we're going to have almost total domination of Nicholas to the point we can control when he lives or dies, which is the reason why you were tempted for suicide in the past.
Yes.
We can control who he meets up with, the women, men
Yes, also.
meets up with.
Very dark, my ex-girlfriend, I think she was like totally overcoat and.
Not only that, even the women you think is your soulmate, they can tell you she's your soulmate, and you go, yeah, no worries, she's my soulmate, and off you go. They have total control over your life. That's your problem.
How can I get out?
Well, you need to deal with the primary feeling.
So your addiction is to feel special rather than feel what you actually
What
feel.
you actually feel.
So it's about giving up that addiction and then being humble to what is driving the addiction.
So I was processing an emotion this morning. Was that right or was it not?
They will let you process whatever is going to make you closer to them.
I wanted to feel my powerlessness because I thought I was
Yeah,
out of the
they will
power
let
problem.
you. If you just listen, you need to listen to what I'm saying because you're not humble to what I'm saying.
Sorry.
They will let you process any emotion which strengthens their bond with you.
They will not
When
be-
you feel powerless,
Yeah.
that strengthens their bond with you. they will let you process that. So it won't be real, they'll let you do it, but it won't be the real thing you need to feel.
I think there's something in my head, and I'm very logical, but I cannot grasp what you're saying to me. So I don't
Correct.
understand why.
Correct.
It's like it's a blockage, but I'm very logical and very
But they're doing that
intellectual.
as well.
Mm.
They're doing that as well.
They block my understanding of this.
They don't want me to even talk to you.
Yeah, of course. That's why when I went to see an apostle, their voice was speaking to me. I don't want to speak to her.
Yeah.
The same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And they've got almost total control of your life. Now,
Since
for a long time, yes, the issue you face is you're a very mediumistic person. So you're very open to spirits talking to you and guiding you and pushing you around.
that's not helping me in my case. Finally, that's not helping me. That's not.
Well,
Sorry.
it could be of assistance if you're connected to a different group of spirits, couldn't it?
Of course.
Yes, but the different group of spirits are not going to help you avoid your feelings.
I have to work on my feelings. Yes.
Yes, but all the feelings
Or
you're currently
they're not
working on are
avoiding.
not your feelings.
But they are theirs.
They're theirs. Or they are feelings that enable them to have more control over you.
So finally, even if I work on myself, they are still here and influencing me. So I cannot go out of the space where I am. So what's the clue there? So how can I do? You told me I need to feel my unworthiness finally.
Just stop for a moment.
So
Yabba, 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 yabba at me, right? But not hearing me. So just stop for a moment. Just let yourself stop. Calm yourself down.
You're a bit panicked.
You're
because
panicked.
They're like, oh, I don't
They're
know.
triggering your panic. They're threatening you, and the more they threaten you, the more panicked you become. You need to stop for a moment. You understand? Just calm down for a moment, stop for a moment, and right. What can you do is the question, right? Now, the very first thing that needs to happen is you need to be willing to deal with emotions that you don't want to deal with, right? So the first thing is be more humble than your being. The second thing is face some truth. These spirits are not helping you. Any of you talked to Nicholas over the course of the last few days? Yes? How difficult do you find talking to him? Very difficult, isn't it? Yeah, he's talking all the time, and all you're doing is just there listening. That's it. You're there to listen to him. This is your addiction. You see other people as just being there to listen to you, right? It's one of the addictions. You need to face some truths. What are you wanting out of this? What things do you want by being special?
the power on someone or control
Not just power and control, it's also you want them to hear you. You want them to understand you. But you're not thinking of them, you're thinking of you. It's all me, you see? And this is what the spirits are looking into. They love that. They love that. It's all me, so they can then make it all about you while at the same time get you to do all the things they want you to do. Feed the addiction, if you like. So you're going to have to face the addiction, Nicholas. Now, I'm not going to have the time, unfortunately, to speak with you in more detail about this because we want to answer more questions from others and everything else as well. But I wanted to at least say that to you, that they have control of your life at the moment and you can get out of their control, but you're going to have to find the reason why they have control. Why do you give them control? That's going to have to be the focus of your life for a while. Why do you give these spirits control of your life? A lot of that generally is about you don't want to make decisions for yourself. You want somebody else to keep telling you what to do and make your life easier.
You already said that to me in the email and the answer you asked you sent to me.
Correct. So what I want you to do is to reread that email and learn more from it. You follow? But you're in a state that is very directly controlled because you're mediumistic. Now later in your life, being mediumistic is going to be good for you. It's going to be a gift, right? But at the moment, it's not a gift in the sense that for you, it feels like a weight, yeah? a weight on your shoulders that you're struggling under.
And I'm not using. I try to close doors, but it's not working. I'm still healing on it.
That's because you don't want to give up you don't want to be humble and give up the addiction.
Of being special, things being special.
Mm.
That comes from my decision, or can it come from any childhood things, or no?
Well, no, it comes from the opposite in childhood.
Yeah.
Opposite?
Yeah, it comes from feeling that you're not special and you want to be.
Okay.
Yep. And you're going to have to work your way through that emotionally. So that, unless you deal with that problem, and by the way, I've met many people like you, and we have some people in Australia that I've known for some time that are exactly like you as well, that have had heavy spirit influence right from quite a young age, usually quite violent fathers, usually, or not violent, so much violent, but pushy fathers or something like that. You had no father.
It's like I have my father is like absentee father, or it's like
Absent father. Yeah.
absentee father.
That's
He's
right.
there, but he's not there. It's like,
That's right, yeah. And usually it's issues with their father, trying to gain approval and acceptance in the world. But some of the ones that I'm thinking of, after 10 years, they still want to feel special.
I have to get rid of this.
And you have to and so they still have the same
right
problem.
away.
Yeah, it needs to be dealt with. And so
I feel I have the will to do it. I hope I still have it, because I want to get out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you can. The issue you're going to face is that you're very, very dependent now on receiving these feelings from them, and you're not very brave about feeling those feelings. You're happy to feel other feelings, but not the actual feelings that cause the attraction.
It's frightening me. It's like
Yeah, and also these spirits are going to be threatening. They're going to potentially try to manipulate you into suicide.
They tried already. I was like controlled like a zombie.
Yeah.
They're trying to jump on terrorists, and what saved me was like.
But the reason why they've let off on that in the last few years is because they have more control now.
So they leave me. They don't kill me because they cannot control me.
Correct. But as soon as they can't control you, they want to kill you, right?
And so what it's going to require.
That's what I need to feel.
Yeah, but also have some moral fortitude to treat yourself well in these situations.
And to never act on the desire to harm yourself.
What they want, their threats. And I spoke to our friend John, who's in the spirit world.
Yeah.
And he and other spirit friends really want to help you with this. So
not without assistance.
No. And
even spiritual assistance.
They said, it's going to require you breaking some of the addictions that you have, like being with people and being silent and trying to listen to them.
Yeah.
And feel.
You need to stop talking so much.
Yeah.
It prevents me from feeling.
Yeah. And it's also.
It also rejects people. It pushes people away.
And the spirits with you are very used to dominating you, and they want you to be isolated so that they can just continue to sort of have this. They want you not to have relationships so that they can have feelings through you. And actually, the feeling is that there was a lot of chaos in your childhood and that it was very abusive, and that it is an extension of that. And John is saying you need to come back to those times in your childhood, but in a very kind way with yourself. But you need to grow some moral fortitude around this, because you yourself are so willing to engage with the addictions with these spirits, and in
your own addictions, sexual and otherwise.
Sexual and emotional, and with people, and also you're very definite about not wanting to deal with what was in your childhood, and you're going to need to do that. Yeah.
That's could explain why my sister is schizophrenic and she's also very.
It's like your whole family is very mediumistic, and it's very chaotic.
Yeah,
and
very,
and very much
Mother chaotic.
Spirit interference, and you have the opportunity to change that for yourself. You'll be able to understand your family a lot better, but it's going to require, like at the moment, what you're calling emotional processing is very spirit influenced.
Yep.
So it's like coming back to what is God's truth about love, morality, ethics. I'm going to stick inside of that and then have your feelings. That's going to be a lot harder for you it's going to take work, because at the moment what you're doing is sort of feeling in this very influenced way, and they're like, yes, let Nicholas feel, do that, so he gets the illusion he's progressing,
But I'm not.
but you're not. So when you
Thank
come
you.
back to this time, and when you decide to be moral and ethical, it's going to be harder for you to feel. Just understand, okay, this is because it's real now, you know. And our spirit friends want to help you with that, but they can't help you unless you make these moral decisions about how you're going to treat yourself and how you're going to treat others.
Yes.
And once you do that, then you open up the space around you a bit for them to come.
Then we can help him.
Yeah.
There's also some spirit friends trying to help me in a very bad times. I saw like very lighted spirit.
Yeah.
But it's glimpse because the rest they are
Okay,
here.
so
They're trying to help you.
talking.
Sinister, there's
Sinister.
no need for that.
Yeah, no need for that.
That's unkind. Yeah.
Spirit influence comment as well.
Very spirit influence, yeah.
So that's I think all.
I
we
think
need to
that's
say.
that's all. Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. And then you want to ask?
Can I ask for a toilet break?
For a toilet break, yes. Yes. It is really good.
Yeah, me too.
And this one,
Yeah, let's do a few more. Well, what's the time?
it's 11:15. Oh no, it's 10 to 12.
Yeah, so we're probably only going to be able to do this for another until lunchtime. And should we make lunch about 12:30? Is that all right?
Yeah.
With you guys?
And then we can come back and do some.
And we'll do a mediumship after lunch. Yeah. So
I don't mind
we've only
mixing
got
it if
basically
you want.
20, 25.
So they're nice, are they?
You with this, which one?
Okay. What is my biggest block to my soul development, or how to speed up my soul development?
Who?
That's Attila.
Attila.
Did I say it right, Attila?
Yeah. So Attila, what you're doing here is you're placing the burden or responsibility on me for what you need to deal with. So I can't answer the question, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to say, tell me my next biggest thing I need to deal with, and I'll go and deal with that. And I'm going, well, no, that's your responsibility to work out what your next biggest thing is, not mine. And a lot of people do this with me. They start to suspect that I know a lot more about them than what they thought I did originally. And then what they do is they start to want to put the burden on me for their progress, right? Which is what you're doing here. And I know you don't think that's your motivation, but you want to be told from somebody what's your next thing. And you need to decide what your next thing is to do with. But I must say to you, and this is common for all of you, the law of attraction would already be bringing it to you anyway. So God is already, and this is something I want to each of you to understand about God, is that God loves you, like He cares about you. So if you got God, He wants to have a relationship with you. He cares about you. So what He's trying to do, and this is your soul here, you're two halves actually, aren't you? So one, you're, the male half. Your soul attraction is female, isn't it? Yeah. So you're the male part, and the other half is your female counterpart, obviously. Now, you're God's child. That soul, that complete soul, is God's child. So God wants to give you information. He wants to share things with you. He wants to help you progress. He wants you to become more loving. He wants to help you do that, but He's not going to do that without your will being involved. But He wants to do it. So He's trying to share information with you. Now, God does that through the operation of your conscience. If that doesn't work, which for most people it doesn't work very well, He's also trying to do it through the law of attraction. So that law, the purpose of the law is for you, for your condition, your current condition, to attract events that cause you to ponder about your current condition. So that's what the purpose of the law is, to make corrections and help you. It's also a positive law in the sense that if there's things that God feels you're doing right, then He wants to also reward you for those particular things. But the rewards are not going to be usually what you expect as a reward. A lot of the rewards are very much internal, like you get more confidence, or you grow in more desire for love, or You know, they're internal. A lot of rewards are internal, inside of yourself. But God's trying to give you information about where you should go. And the law of attraction is bringing you events. Now, the law of attraction is bringing you thousands of different types of events because the law works with regard to the condition of the soul, not just to one aspect of its condition. But basically the law is saying, deal with all those things, not just one thing. Deal with all those things. And so this gets back to the question you asked, doesn't it, about being overwhelmed. The law is bringing you all the things all at once as you should be dealing with, from a condition of love, from a position if you want to love. And a lot of times we want to just select one and then focus on that. And you've got to be real careful with that desire, because you're going to end up selecting only the things you think you should deal with, and you're going to leave everything else. And that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I had a similar question that for an hour or for a day, should I concentrate on one thing or whatever comes up? And then you answered whatever comes up, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, and the main issue you have is arrogance. I don't know if you are aware of that, but that's your main issue. Mary might have tried to help you with that already, I think. And it's a big issue, and it's a big issue for many of you men here. You have a very strong feeling that your opinion is greater than God's, and you know better than God does about you and those kind of things. There's no perspective in that, and this is why you want to argue at times, and also why you want to feel like there's a feeling that you gain by having those feelings of power over your life, which is really about being terrified of dealing with some substantial sad emotion. And most men have this deep terror about dealing with really difficult emotions. And so the key is to not avoid anything that comes up. The key is to recognize everything that comes up. Now, initially, there's a lack of sensitivity in most people's soul where you don't recognize it. It's a bit like if a person comes up and punches you in the face, you know they did it. But if a person comes up and talks behind your back, you might not even know you did it. They did it. And the difference between those two actions is one is obvious and one is not so obvious. Right? Now, oftentimes we only respond to the obvious. We only deal with the obvious. And that's it, because we lack the emotional sensitivity to know everything that's going on. And the more arrogant we are, the more we're dealing with just the obvious. Like, you could say God's law is smacking us in the face, and we go, oh, God's law is smacking me in the face, so I've got to do something. But we don't deal with the things that are more nuanced, that where God's law is showing us there's other problems, and we are either totally zoned out, totally tuned out to those problems, or we think those things are good, and so we think we should keep them. And this is something that you face in your life, and it's something that you will need to address. You need to be more humble, more softer to your feelings. If you are more humble, then God can show you more. God's not going to show you one thing. God's got a list.
God knows you can deal with it.
God knows you can deal with it. And when I say God's got a list, I'm not joking. What happens is, in the spirit world when you pass, and after you sort of realise, oh, this is my condition and this is where I live, you will find that list will be presented to you in your mind constantly. God's got a list. And the list is everywhere where you've broken the law. And it's just how sensitive we are to looking at that list as to whether we even can bear to look at it. What happens for most people in the hells is that they got that list, but most people are in a rage about the list. And so they're still committing more sins and they're adding to the list. So a lot of people, when they first pass into the spirit world, it's not like your condition is locked to whatever it is you developed it on earth. Once you pass into the spirit world, you can add to the list of things you're going to have to deal with. And many people do. Like, there's many people historically who on earth weren't a murderer, but they became a murderer as a spirit. And the way they did that was they influenced people on earth to die through their actions. Right? is they felt the power of that over a person. So spirits who are with Nicholas here, they are like that. They feel, I get power over trying to kill somebody, or trying to have total domination over his life. And so that these spirits are committing more sins, doing more sins, more damage to themselves as well as to others, and therefore they're accruing more sin, and there's going to be more things they're going to have to deal with as a result of that. And they're degrading their condition even further. So they're in the hells already, but they're degrading their condition further. So the key is to see that, okay, at any point in your existence on earth or in the spirit world, there are lists of things that we do wrong. We've been on earth encouraged to sin. Your whole environment is encouraging you to sin. It's encouraging you to sin financially. It's encouraging you to sin with regard to the way you use substances. It encourages you to sin with regard to just little physical things like coffee, tea, and all these other things. It encourages you into sin there too, because we end up imbibing a life of a lack of ethics in the process. That's sin. And then it encourages you to sin sexually. It encourages you to sin in your relationships. It encourages you to sin in your way you interact with your children, with the way you interact with parents, with the way you interact with society. And the world itself actually looks upon most sins as normal. Like, it's the world we live in, just live it, And so the problem with that is that we end up being shocked sometimes by the length of the list we have. And the more arrogant you are, the more you're going to be shocked about the length of the list. And not only that, you'll be shocked about what weight God puts on things in the list that you thought were minor and he thinks is major, right? So, and the key is to be emotionally prepared for that occurrence, right? And the way to be emotionally prepared is to recognize perspective. God knows a lot more about your life than you do. God knows what's loving and you don't. And also be humble. Every emotion you might have to feel, even the emotions of being exposed for all sorts of things that you didn't think were a problem, even those emotions, if you're humble, you will deal with it all. You'll be fine. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yep. But don't be addicted to this whole concept that I'm doing real good, I'm doing real good, I'm doing real good, tell me I'm doing real good. It's not going to go well for you. Because in the end, when you hit the list and you recognise how long it is, you're going to be shocked, and then you'll probably be tempted to give up.
Yeah.
God's not critical in this regard. He's just saying, here's all the areas that you weren't loving. And God's also saying, but you have free will and you have to fix it. And one thing I'd like to say about sin is this. Who created it?
We.
Humans created sin. God didn't. Humans created sin. Who created my sin? Me. The sins of your forefathers are not visited on you and attributed to you. Your sins are attributed to you. The effects of the sins of your forefathers are on you, naturally, because there's no way to avoid that. But the actual sin itself of your forefathers is not visited upon you. But whatever sins you have chosen are the sins you will need to repair. Right? Now, sin is human creation. It's a human creation. God requires humans to fix it. Very important thing. It's an issue with God. It's an issue of self-responsibility. If you do something, you create something, and it actually happens to be unloving, then you need to fix it. And God's laws are trying to destroy the thing already. He's trying to help you already to fix it. If you create a loving thing, God's laws will help you build it to be bigger than what you even envisaged that you imagined it would be. Right? God's laws will help you build it. Right? So God's not unrewarding in that regard. And on one hand, he's saying, all these unloving things need to be destroyed, but you created them, you destroy them. But all these loving things you want to build, I want to build them too, so I want to help you. That's how God treats all of the things we do. So the rewards from doing loving things are great. And at the moment, many of you can't imagine what those rewards will be, but in your long-term and longer-term life, and particularly once you enter the spirit life, you'll start seeing, there's these huge rewards, like huge rewards. Many of you, even though you might be in the hells right now, in terms of your condition, many of you don't have to be by the time you pass. Many of you may never experience the hells by the time you pass if you deal with some of these things here on earth. You'll find you enter the spirit world in second sphere, third sphere, fourth sphere, fifth sphere. Right? I just was for a moment thinking, why don't we ask our spirit friends to have a look and scan over Austria, where we are now, and see how many people are actually in the third sphere of the spirit world while they're on earth. Right? Now, if I asked third sphere spirits to do this, it would require a few million of them to get the job done. So I need to ask my celestial friends to do it because only one of them is needed to get the job done. So we're going to ask one of our celestial friends just to do that for us. What do you reckon the answer is? In the third sphere of the spirit world. Now, I must say, this is not including any children. Because many children at the time of birth are at the sixth sphere of the spirit world. Yeah, so we're close to. So we're not including children, we're including people who are adults here. Anybody, say, above, should we say, well, what's the age of consent here in? 18. Anybody above 18?
Our spirit friend said 15. Yeah.
Wow.
No. Over the age of 15. Sorry.
Okay.
No, that's not 15. No.
Over the age of 15, they're saying. Because the reason why they're saying that is by the time a person has become a teenager, generally they're quite set. Yep.
No one.
No one.
And on the whole earth?
Well, it's a different equation. Then I've got to scan the whole earth, and that's going to take some time.
Or in Germany.
Let's see if Germany's better than Austria. You get careful with that feeling is right? Okay. Yeah. So, what about the second sphere?
Yeah, there's a few. I already asked.
Yeah. Four.
And everyone else in the first sphere, to varying degrees.
Yeah.
And it's mainly the moral condition of people that is assisting them
To be in the second sphere, even.
Yeah.
It's not because of the love necessarily they've received, but because they've just been very moral people their entire life.
And acted to love others.
Yeah, and taken action to love.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for their action to love, they wouldn't be in the second sphere either, because they have other problems that would keep them in a lower sphere.
Yeah.
Now, this is pretty much the same in every country. It's a similar equation in every country. So all these questions we ask of, I hope my condition is better than that, whatever. Just get used to it. It's not. And you need to let yourself feel about it and work your way through why it's not. Just like everybody in history is going to have to do. Right? Now, you can choose to do that on earth, and you can choose to do it with God's help, or you can choose to do it, by yourself without God's help. It's just going to take a lot longer doing it by yourself, because to do it by yourself requires self-awareness on every point. So every item in the list, you will need to find some self-awareness on if you do it by yourself. The beauty of doing it with God is God can share with you, and he also encourages then, because you're humble, you get your spirit friends to share with you the sins that they're committing and how to get rid of them. And also, as you receive God's love, you become more sensitive emotionally to love, and therefore you can see your own problems easier because you're sensitive to love. So the more love you receive, the more you go, oh, now I can see I do that as well, and I do that as well. So what actually happens, the more love you receive, is the list grows longer, unfortunately sometimes, because you see more that you didn't see, and you see things you didn't see before. And that's good. It's not a bad thing.
But when we're humble and we want to love, we want to know the list.
That's right.
And also, you know, whenever people ask what's your IN, am I, you know, do you think, whatever, I always encourage people to look at the motivation for the question. Because if you're receiving God's love and you're sincere about that, you realise you've got work to do and you want to do it, you know, and you want to love people as equals regardless of the sphere that you're in. And often the people who ask that question are wanting to feel superior. Yeah.
Which is a big problem.
Yeah.
The more you want to feel superior, the darker your condition actually is.
Yeah. So, and do you feel like you covered that one now?
So you asked the question, if I continue my development at the same pace, will I reach a one with God before I pass into the spirit world? No, is the answer to that. You definitely would not. You'll be lucky to get the second sphere, to be honest, if you continue with the same pace. So it's going to require more humility on your part to it. But this same thing applies, it's a good question because the same thing applies to most people here. You're not going to reach a one with God if you keep going at your same pace you're currently going. You're going to be lucky to enter the spirit world in the second sphere for the majority of you. And most of you, if you keep going the same pace you're currently going, you'll end up in a worse place than you currently are. So that's not, I know it's disheartening to feel that, but I need to share that truth with you because there needs to be more awareness of sin, you see. The more you become aware of your sin, God's happy. God goes, Tilla, this is fantastic, you can see this problem now. The reason why I spent some time with Julius yesterday on you know how he said he's like a mosquito sucking blood out of people, and I spent some time with him about it because I get really happy when I see a person see an awareness develop. You know, I feel that's a developing sincerity, right? God feels even more strongly than I do about that. You know, God rewards your sincerity. So don't be disheartened by it. Just go, right, if I'm not making good progress and I thought I was, then obviously me thinking I was a part of the problem. You know, and we need to address that as to why do I need to think I am rather than just feel where I'm at. Now, all of us have problems. We don't need to judge our problems and you don't need to compare with other people. Each of you have unique problems. You've had a different life, you know, like some of you have had very traumatic, you know, I look at your life, Nicholas, your childhood, very chaotic and traumatic, spirit-induced, mother who's unstable, really mentally unstable, family quite mentally unstable at times, the whole family, very spirit influenced, very chaotic life as a child. So there's specific problems you're going to have. And then I look at some of the others and you haven't had that chaos. So, but the trouble with not having some of that chaos is you don't feel the pain of the problems you've had. And so sometimes I've seen people who are in Nicholas's state progress very rapidly because once you recognise the chaos and know what to do, you can progress. But I've seen other people who've been really confident that they're doing really, really well, and they have hardly progressed at all, you know, in hundreds or even sometimes thousands of years in the spirit world. They've just barely progressed, you know. So your progress even is going to be dependent upon your state of humility. It's going to be dependent on what you eventually end up seeing. So what I would encourage you to do is to see more, allow yourself to see more. And don't be disheartened by what you see. Think of it as the way I sort of see it is, now I know, now I can deal. That's sort of how I see it. And if you have the viewpoint, oh no, there's another thing, oh no, there's another thing, then basically there's already a momentum towards not wanting to know. And that's going to be a problem for your future. Right? It's better if you can know. Because if you know, then you can do. But if you don't know, if you're not aware, then there's nothing you know to do. You know, it's very hard to find out what to do. So when I'm talking to God, God's exposed the problem that I have, and like this love of self problem, I go, right, now I know I got the problem, now I need to resolve what can I do about it. And that's my responsibility to even do that too. God wants me to develop my own passion and desire to correct my own problems. It's a part of actually, and as you do, you'll feel like proud of yourself in the end, that you're able to correct your own problems too. Yeah. Yep. If we come down to front here.
What's a practical thing we can do to be more humble?
Again, it's not one thing. It's like the first thing that helps me is perspective. I know that I don't know everything. Knowing that is very important to your future life. Knowing also that God knows everything is very important to your future life. So those two things help me greatly. The third thing is every single day, one of the prayers I have to God is help me be humble today. Like, I want to be more humble today. Because if I can be more humble today, then I can deal with something today that I don't have to deal with tomorrow because it will be fixed. Does that make sense? I sort of have the view, don't put it off, bring it forward. You know what I mean? Yeah. Most people have the view of, see, I've got a problem, let's delay it 5 years. You know, like, I don't want to deal with it right now, I'll put it off for 5 years. And if you keep doing that, what you will find is that 5 years go past, another 5 years go past, another 5 years go past, and you'll end up with a lot of regrets in your life and a lot of wasted time and a lot of wasted relationships and everything for you to learn anything. What you really want to do is you want to know things sooner. You want to be aware of things sooner. It requires a lot of desire, in the sense with God, desire to know more about what problems you face, what problems you have, but also more about the good things about yourself too, that you also need to learn how to develop. So one of the things I know that's good about me is I love the truth, right? So I want to know how to develop that love further. Does that make sense? Like, because it's a good thing about me, I want to make it better, right? So I want to know, what do I do? Like, so when I notice myself, in a group like this, there's often projections and everything, and people ask you a question, but there's a lot of hidden agendas behind the question. So if I'm more truthful, I go, oh, no, I need to focus on the hidden agenda rather than the answer to that question. Like I did earlier with
Eric?
Yeah. Was it?
About the one thing to focus on in a day?
Yeah, the one thing you need to focus on a day. The agenda there was, I don't want to feel overwhelmed. So let's work on that agenda that you have, right? So that is me being more honest with Eric, because I could have just listened to his face value comment, knowing that he's actually fibbing, lying to himself. I could, and ignoring that he's feeling overwhelmed. I could listen to that face value question and answer that question, but the problem is it doesn't deal with the actual problem, which is avoiding the feeling of being overwhelmed. So if I did that and I know better, then I'm not really being truthful with him, you see. So I've got to be more truthful. I know more of what's going on. I need to say, even though it might not be happy to hear and tricky, and the person might not agree. Many of you don't agree with what I say. And I don't expect you to necessarily, but I do wonder why you don't listen more. Because it's sort of like you come along to a seminar for 15 hours this week, you surely would come along with the motive of listening. Do you go along to other seminars with the motive of telling them what to do? Like you go along to a music festival, let's say one of my favourite musicians was Billy Joel or something like that. So you go along to a Billy Joel concert, and it is a part of your job. You go along there and you decide, put up your hand and say, Billy Joel, I don't like the songs you sing. I think you need to sing these other songs, and I don't like the lyrics of that song. That song wasn't very nice. Is that the disrespect you have for them? So why do you have that disrespect for me? Is the question, you see. So many of you want to argue with me, and I get that. I understand why the arguments are present. But if I was going along to somebody to listen, I'll be listening a lot more than you guys are listening. Does that make sense to you? Many of you want to argue. And I get that. I get that a lot of the things I say trigger emotions, and you just feel like, I've got to spurt it out. You know, like I've got to go.
The sin is fighting for itself.
The sin is fighting for itself already, right? And we don't realise it. And so we've got to say something. I disagree with that. Or, but what about this? And but what about that? But many times you're not seeing, even in that moment, you're being unloving to the very person who's trying to love you. Now, if you do that in the spirit world, all the spirit's going to do is just walk away. And you won't get help. And if you do that to your to friends who are trying to, the main reason why the majority of you are here is not because you had a motive to be here. It's because your spirit friends had a motive for you to be here. They felt it would be good for you. Does that make sense? And some of you are not in that place, but the majority are. So and there's very little awareness in many of you how much those spirit friends influence your desire to be here, even. Right? They're trying to help you change. And many of them are going, we can hear them when we're talking, just listen more. You know what I mean? But they also understand that you're in a fight. You're in a fight, that truth and error fight we talked about yesterday, the fight between truth and error. It is an internal battle and it's difficult. And I understand that what the subjects we cover are quite difficult compared to going along to a Billy Joel concert. You understand? Like, go along to a Billy Joel concert, if he said some lyrics that you're not in that agreement with, like, she cuts you once, she cuts you twice, she cuts up your way. Stiletto is someone uses a song lyric. And you're going, that's a bad view of a woman.
Well, a lot of people are like, yes, he really gets me.
But you're not going to put up your hand and say, Billy, can't you just tone it down a bit? And the reality is, if you have respect for the person you're seeing, you will just probably let them speak more and allow yourself to contemplate what's being said, right? And that's the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that frequently, because our emotions get so tied up and are so fighting for themselves, we feel the need to fight the person who's just sharing truth with you. And that's unfortunate, because all that does for me is it says, I'm tired of sharing truth with you now if you're going to fight it all the time. I'm just going to go on to the next group and hopefully someone there is not going to fight so much. You follow? So I would like to see that as a group, you allow yourself more to see your sin. We were talking with our spirit friends last night about each sort of group of people, due to attractions, has specific problems, and we were talking with them last night, saying, well, what specific problem is really the major issue as a group that you have now? I'm not saying that all of you here have this problem, but it is a major issue in the entire group. And they said most don't see their own sin. Yeah? And that is going to be a problem with your relationship with God, because God's trying to help you see that your sins make you unhappy. Right? They make your life harder. They make your life worse. Not only do they make this life unhappy and worse, but your future life will be infinitely better if you could deal with your sins in this life. Right? Like I said, you have the prospect of passing over into the spirit world without sin, even. Right? In the first century, when I passed, I was in the 10th sphere of the spirit world. I was the only one there when I arrived. There was nobody else there. And it's such a place of beauty and everything. The way I arrived there was when I passed in the first century after I was crucified, the very first place I visited was the hells. So I went there first because I wanted to tell people in the hells that God's love was available to them. Does that make sense? So I visited hells first, and I tried to talk with them for quite some time, and then I went to the higher levels of first sphere and talked to groups of people there that never heard about God's love either. So I talked to them about God's love. That in the end there were big. This is in the 1st century. Big sort of auditoriums, much bigger than this. But, there's auditoriums like in the 1st sphere. Even there's auditoriums where there's 20,000, 30,000, 50,000 people will fit. And so we talked to large groups of people about God's love being available. And then when I went to the 2nd sphere, same again. And then 3rd sphere, same again. And 4th sphere, same again. And all the way through this time, I had with me all the people who had already received God's love coming with me. It was beautiful. It was like a procession. And we went from the hills to the 1st sphere, through the 1st sphere, through the 2nd sphere, 3rd sphere. And each sphere I went to, those that couldn't go to the next sphere because of their development, didn't come. And the next sphere, and next sphere, and next sphere, 6th sphere, 7th sphere. And so I didn't go straight to my home in the 1st century when I died. I went to each sphere all the way through to the 10th. And that was my home. Right? And I was the only one in that home. So it was like having a world to myself in that home. But all the way through, it was just sharing with people. God's love is available. He wants you. He wants you to give you that love. He wants you to be in a condition where you desire it and want it for yourself and want to receive it. He also wants you to deal with the sin that stops you from desiring. Because all of your sins stop you from desiring love as the way God defines love to be. And so that was the message I had all the way through. Right, and that this was an offer that was just being made just before, at the time of my birth in the 1st century, it started being made again. And all the way through, and then all the way through to the 10th sphere. And then when I went from the 9th sphere to the 10th sphere, nobody could come with me. So there were some friends I had in the 9th sphere by that stage. Some of them you might have heard of, like Elijah, Moses, the angel Gabriel, the angel who's called the Archangel Michael. There's a few others. They were in the 9th sphere. They had received some of God's love while I was on earth, and they were in the 9th sphere now. But they couldn't come with me to the 10th. And I went to the 10th, and it was like God had created a whole, it's hard to describe, but it's like a whole planet just for me. Yeah. And that's the benefit of receiving God's love on earth. And that's what I would love for you guys to experience in your future. Just that beauty, not having to go through the hells, not having to go through sin because you've done it here, and receiving God's love, and also not fighting it. We talked about this on yesterday, didn't we, about fighting. A lot of times we don't realise how much we're fighting, and yet it's such a beautiful gift, and we don't know how long God's going to continue offering it for, to be honest. So it's something that's available now. Take the opportunity. Like all gifts, they're available for a time. And there is a lot of people who have expectation out of love feel that God should offer love all the time. This personal love all the time. And God knows that if God did that, you would all just expect it rather than treat it as a gift. So he wants you to see it as a gift, available now. Take the opportunity. Does that make sense? I think that's a good place to have a break for lunch. So let's do that. And what's the time now?
It's 12:30.
Okay, sorry. So can we come back at 1? Yeah. Mary and I are probably going to want to finish around 2:30, 3 o'clock today. We definitely don't want to go beyond 3. We've got to pack up to do and all that kind of stuff as well. So we'll probably arrange this afternoon, like we might do 1 hour, maybe at the most, of some mediumship, and then,
Can I talk to you about how to do it?
yeah, Mary and I will discuss it, and we'll let you know after.